Welcome to Planetary Calendars, Astro Portraits. I'm Ralph Demetrius, one of the astrologers. The segment this time is about the actor Brad Pitt, as he's known, one of the Golden Boys. And when you look at the chart, you understand how he got that name. Brad is a Sagittarian with Sagittarius rising and Vesta conjunct the Sun, which tends to make the Sun even brighter. Interestingly, the Sun is at 25 degrees Sagittarius. It's within 1 degree of the Galactic Center, which is a huge, black hole with huge amounts of power. And so you feel when you meet him, there's just a lot of power there. There's a lot of power in that personality. And because the Sun is so close to the Ascendant is just before sunrise, there's just the sense of, implicit becoming. And of course, it's in Sagittarius. It's in the sign of, optimism and vision and athleticism and physicality. It goes back, of course, to his Jupiter. Well, his Jupiter is in Aries. He's actually born in the year of the rabbit. Jupiter in Aries at 9 degrees is trine 120 degrees to the Ascendant at 11 degrees Sagittarius. So it's in the 5th house. It's the house of fun and creativity and romance, and all that energy in the Jupiter, that dynamic Jupiter Aries energy. It's a very strong energy, feeds right in to the Ascendant. So when you meet him, or his personal presence has a great sense of creativity, pours into that presence. So when you meet him, or you see him on the screen, or in conversation, she just brings a lot of power to it. He has the moon in Capricorn at 22 degrees Capricorn. Interestingly, very close to the moon position of his good friend George Clooney, also a Capricorn moon, though with his sun in Taurus. The moon is conjunct Venus. This is interesting. And it's also very conjunct Mercury. He has Mercury, the moon, Venus, all in Capricorn, as well as Mars. And this is where it gets interesting. Because you see, the moon in Capricorn is opposite the sign of the moon's rulership, Cancer. So it's called the detriment position. It's an internal position. It shows a lot of depth. Emotionally, he has a lot of depth. He also has good emotional control. Many times people like people, men especially with moon in Capricorn, because they have strong emotional control. It's conjunct Venus, so it brings a lot of charm to it. Whenever you have the Venus conjunct the moon or the sun, it brings a huge amount of charm to their personality. It's in the 2nd house. Venus in the 2nd house is in her own house, the house of beauty, the house of Taurus. So it gives him a very, a lot of natural beauty. The moon being there, Mercury being there, it adds to his speech patterns as well. Now, Venus in Capricorn is not an overall distinguished position, neither is Mercury, but Mars is, and Mars is conjunct the South Node. So Mars in Capricorn shows great physical endurance. It's in the 2nd house. It's a very strong house for it just because it has to do with your natural talent. He was born with a lot of natural vitality. Because the Mars is in what's called the exalted position, and it's at 10 degrees, and then Venus, which is the furthest away, is at 23 degrees, it lends that energy. Whenever you have a planet in one of these extrovert positions, rulership or exaltation, it lends energy to the other planets. So even though the moon is in a detriment position, it allows it to function well because the energy in that detriment, which is this internalized energy, is able to express itself. It's able to have an advocate who speaks for it in the Mars. So he can bring that vulnerability out. He can bring that structured emotion out through his physical body. It allows his physical body language to communicate that well. And then because Venus is there, it's done very artistically. Now realize his Jupiter is in the 5th house of creativity. His second house, which is artistry, among other things, second house and seventh house are the houses of Venus, is packed with planets. So this person has a great natural sense of artistry that's projected out through Sagittarius. So boom, And he's got Saturn in rulership in Aquarius in the third house. It's interesting in that Saturn in Aquarius in the third house tends to give him a very serious way of speaking, but that's also a little unusual because it's Aquarius. Aquarius always makes things just a little unusual. When you have there's a lot of actors, screen actors especially, who are Aquarians, and they're prized because they look a little different. There's fewer Aquarians than any other sun sign. It has to do with the time of year when they're born. So they're always a little bit different. It's one of the reasons why we tend to associate the Aquarian energy with angels, angelic energy, because angels are from a different place. Well, there's fewer Aquarians. So it gives his speech patterns a little different style. And yet, because Saturn's there, it's taken seriously. What's above the ascendant? And that's the interesting. So much of his chart is actually below the ascendant. So this is a person who has a tremendous amount of depth, a deep inner life. What's above this, above the horizon? Like how is he projecting out into the world? He has Uranus and Pluto, both in Virgo, up in the 10th house. Well, those two a lot of times relate to mass media. Uranus has to do with technology. Pluto has to do with masses of people. So working in a part of the world where he's, got a claim on the silver screen. Okay. Neptune, the planet that relates so much to illusion and imagination and spirituality, is in the sign of Scorpio. Very potent position for it. Conjunct Juno, Pallas Athena, showing skills and the ability to work, really be tied to something. And the part of fortune in the 12th house. It goes back to that Mars. Mars in Capricorn, Scorpio, these are very potently sexual positions. And the reason is that they're later in the cycle when it's about passing on one's legacy through one's genetics. It's not the romantic part of it. It's not Leo Virgo. It's about being cute and being pretty. It's about passing on power. So he, in that world of illusion, in the studio, on the set, he's able to bring the sense of potency there. And the part of fortune's there, which means it's about how he makes his living. You expect him to show up in the scene and, bring that intensity. It's funny that, you look at something like the Ocean series. Well, in the Ocean series, he was practically the only one who got the girl. With all these guys running around, all these in Las Vegas, he's the one who's in the relationship, because that's part of his personality. That's Venus conjunct the moon, Pallas and Scorpio in the 12th house. It's behind the scenes. You always assume there's something going on behind the scenes with him. It has a certain mysterious quality to his personality, which that Sagittarius Sun and Vesta and that Sagittarius rising belie. You say, oh, he's bright, but what's going on behind the scenes? What's going on deeper in his personality? And that's part of the magic of him. That's part of what makes him so appealing, is that you are reading him on these multiple levels. And that Jupiter brings all of that energy to the rising, all of that fun. There's a huge amount of fun in his personality that just, an energy that gets poured into that rising from the 5th house by the Jupiter. I always look to see what's Jupiter doing. It's the biggest planet. Whatever Jupiter's doing, it gets paid attention to. So that's pretty much Brad Pitt's chart. Quick look. I hope you found it interesting. Make sure you come back and see us for another Astro Portrait. We do those on Tuesdays. We do our forecast for the coming week on Fridays. You can find both of them on Planetary Calendar Astrology on YouTube. You can also, of course, visit planetarycalendar.com so you can find our calendars, our books on health, on astrology, and on feng shui. And until next time, be well.